All right, so empty gallery space. You can see this is the strip mall that we're part of. You've got your Planet Fitness over there. There's like a Bed Bath & Beyond. And then next door to us is the thrift store that Step runs. Here, I'll step outside really quick. So from the outside, the gallery space is like this. We've got kind of a reception desk here, some boxes. And then inside you have our sign, there's PASC. Inside, it's our gallery space. You can see we have a number of artworks on the ground. These will all be going up. We're sort of putting together a quick show here just to get some artwork up on the walls of sort of past things that have been exhibited before, but never all together in this space, because we have another show opening in like 2 weeks. More work here. And hopefully this can give you a sense of kind of a wide variety of work that is done in the studio space here. Really trying to exhibit everybody's sort of distinctive style. Here's some of the product. You've got, you know, postcards, gift cards, bags, prints, t-shirts, lots of socks, great company called Tribe Socks, some mugs, that kind of stuff. More kind of unframed artwork, framed work, that sort of thing. There's the desk again. All right, and I'm gonna go back here into the studio. This is Stanley working over here. Stanley, you want to say anything about your artwork?
Yes.
Yeah, you want to show what you're working on?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna come over here and I'll flip this again so you can see everybody. Oops. All right, so this is Stanley. That's Laura Frankel there.
Hello.
And Stanley is working here on a drawing, and I'll show you some of his completed pieces. And Stanley works with kind of materials do you have here, Stanley?
I have pen, markers and color pencils.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what else do you use? What are these guys?
Paint markers.
Paint markers?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Thanks, Stanley.
You're welcome.
I'm gonna show him one of your big pieces, okay?
Yeah.
All right, so this is a very large piece that Stanley did here that's framed. It's about 45 inches, so it 45 by 45 or so. His work usually starts off looking like this and then gets layers and layers on it. Stanley also has a sketchbook that you work out of, right, Stanley?
Yeah, I was working on the sketchbook.
Would you take that home every day and do drawings?
Yeah.
So yeah, lots of different stuff. You can see sort of the general view of the studio here. It's quite a large space. Right now, we only opened this studio in November, so we're kind of weekly getting more and more artists. I think there's about 10 folks in here today, 9 or 10. And then I'll walk around and show you some more people. And we've got tons and tons of artwork that's been produced since we've started. And this is just the stuff that we think is ready for exhibition. So it's sort of like an ongoing great problem, but definitely something we're working through. This is Alex. Alex just wants to work on his own work. So I'm gonna go past Alex, show you some more stuff here. We've got a thrift store next door. So one of the things that we're doing is kind of repurposing artwork. Oh, and Bon is has been cleaning our bathroom. So he's going through here. Hey, Bon. Hey, Kyrie, do you want to say anything to anybody about your artwork and what you're working on? Yeah. Maybe, hold on, let me turn around the camera here so you can see everybody. This is Kyrie.
Hi.
What are you doing, Kyrie?
Well, I'm doing just the pictures. I colored it all on. And I'm ready for our birthday.
Yeah, because your birthday's coming up, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna have it here.
You're gonna have it here, the party here?
Yeah,
What kind of materials are you using?
materials.
Yeah, like what is this and that?
Those are color splash colors
The splash of colors?
and splash colors. Yeah. I'll be spending. I'll be going to Olive Garden on my birthday.
Oh, yeah.
These are splash colors like animals or anything.
Lots of
I'm
animals.
just doing the same thing as a perception of art.
All right. Do you like coming to the studio? Do
Yeah,
you call yourself an artist?
yeah.
All right. Nice. All right. Thanks, Gary. We're gonna come over here to you, Gerard. What you working on? Working on Elmo? Which one is that? Oh, that's mine, huh? Do another shirt? Okay. Good. Here, let me, that's Laura Frankel. Switch it around here. Lots of different stuff, huh? What's the words here? What does that say? Says Hulk Hogan? So you got your Elmo and your Hulk Hogan. Yeah. Oh, you're pulling Elmo out? Okay. Does he come with you every day? You got two Elmos. I thought you just had one. I didn't know that. All right, well, I guess that makes sense. You got two Elmos here too. There's your buddy. Nice, Gerard. Yep. All right, Gerard. That was nice too. Beautiful work. I'm gonna show him this one over here, this finished shirt that you did.
I did that myself.
And Gerard, did you have an exhibition here recently?
Me?
Yeah?
I did this time for Hogan.
Do you remember the show that you had here?
Yeah.
With who else?
My brother Jeffrey.
No, but who else was in the show with you? Which other artists here?
Stan.
I think it was Doran, right?
Yeah.
And Robert too?
Yeah.
All right.
Oh my God. Look at it.
3-person show.
And they were doing it, Anthony.
We'll talk about that later, okay? All right. Thanks, Gerard. All right, Dennis, do you want to say hello to some people on the Zoom? This is Dennis. I'm going to flip around the camera here real quick.
Oh, I do the.
Oh, here, you know what? Maybe we'll come around this side so that we can show them.
Yeah, cool.
Working on some quilts?
Mhm.
So some quilt drawing?
Yep.
Cool, nice. And what's that, what mediums are you using? What materials? Do you remember what this is? You did some what?
Hey.
Yeah, and what else?
All the color pencil.
Color pencil too? All right, so kind of a mixed media approach here?
Yep.
All right. And you're doing only quilts right now, huh?
Yep.
What did you do before the quilts?
Some building.
Yeah, a lot of buildings, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So I see a relationship here between the buildings and the quilts.
Yep.
You like kind of grids and lines?
Yep.
Yeah. It's definitely there. All right. Thanks. How you doing? You wanna show everyone what you're working on?
That's a turn.
It's a tray. Okay. I think you're looking at Michael here.
My name is Marquise.
This is Michael Marquise. That's cool. And is this watercolor and watercolor pencil too?
Yeah.
And Sharpie?
Yeah.
You're using all the materials today, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. And how many days have you been in the studio now? Is this your second week?
Yeah.
Okay, so pretty recent. Okay, nice. Thanks. Can we see, maybe I'll show Robert, one of your pieces that you finished already. But you got a new one you're starting here, right?
Mhm.
Okay. I'll show them one of the ones in the back there so they can see it. You want to come with me? Okay. Robert. Right here, this one?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
You okay, Lee?
It's a new piece, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And are these all figures here?
Yeah.
Are those you
Yeah.
or other people?
Yeah.
You, everybody, huh? Okay. Everybody together. Oh, just Hannah over and over? Okay. All right. Nice. All right. Who this person was? This is Elise.
Hi,
Doran stuff or your stuff, Elise?
Doran.
That's Doran's, okay. We'll work here. We keep all the materials over here. That's Dynasty helping people out over there. All the art materials are here, accessible to all the artists. They all have their own bins as well. A phone that keeps coming through here. Over here, did you want to show what you're working on too?
Yes.
Okay, what you got there? Well, that's beautiful.
That's a Dominican flag.
A Dominican flag. All right, what's your name?
Ariel.
Ariel. Very
Yeah.
nice, Ariel. This is probably your second week in the studio too?
Yeah, this is my first time.
First time today. Oh, that's what I thought. Yeah, okay. Very good. All right, 2 days in a row. Nice work, Ariel. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
So that's kind of most of it. We can go see Doran over here too. He's very prolific, paints on everything. Doran, you have let's wait till you finish that. I'll show you some of his work first. We've got a very large piece here that he's in the process with. A mannequin. Oh, and here he is. You want to say hi, Doran?
Hi.
What are you doing? You're doing some painting over here?
Yeah.
They're saying hi. That's a studio in Kalamazoo. You paint this too?
Yeah.
Here, I'll just hold this back a little bit so they can see you.
I think all the time.
All that, huh?
All the time.
And do you know what kind of materials you're using?
Just markers.
Markers?
Yep.
What else?
Paint.
A lot of paint, right? Acrylic paint.
Paint fluid.
Does this have any watercolor on it too? No, just paint?
Paint of it.
Okay.
Water.
And this one's on canvas, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Sometimes it's on paper, sometimes canvas.
Yeah.
And do you want to show one of your cabinets that you did? I can turn this around.
Yeah.
It's a cabinet that Doran's been working on here. Yeah, that's nice.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a good one. Where's that table? Oh, got a table and a chair down here too. Here's a table that he's been painting onto, doing a top for this.
Yeah.
There'll be a piece of glass that'll go over that one. And then a nice chest of drawers here. And then another big piece right here,
Right here.
right there. All right. Is there anything you want to tell them about being an artist?
I've been good.
You did good?
Yeah.
Do you like making art? Okay.
Yeah.
Do you like having exhibitions, having your work in shows?
Yes.
Yeah. Is it nice to have people see your artwork? What about when they buy it? Yeah. Is that good? All right. Okay. Thanks, Doran.
Okay.
Okay. See if I can figure out how to flip this around. All right. There you go. So,
Do you supply all the art supplies and do they request what they want or how does that work?
yeah, exactly. Both. We have all the art supplies. We purchase all the art supplies. We get some things sometimes that we think people will enjoy using that maybe they're not used to, and have people try out, experiment with things. And then there's certain artists who are really have certain materials that they really like to use more than others. And so we'll try to get them, the best quality of that we can. And usually it kind of builds up over time, as somebody gets more specific in terms of how they work and what materials they like to use. We get them sort of more complex materials to work with, sometimes higher end things. There's, I would say every week, probably not every week, but every other week, we usually have a new artist who's starting out in our program. We launched this during COVID, so the numbers were kind of lower that when we started out, and as we get a little better at managing COVID, we're getting more and more people coming to participate in the program. So the numbers keep increasing. So when we have a new artist, it's a lot about just trying to get to understand them, what they like to work with, what subjects they like to use. So you saw people like Dennis, who was working from books. So we have some artists who like to use reference material, and then others who just like to work out of their heads, just their imaginations, like Stanley. And then people who are a little bit more like process oriented, making kind of more abstract work like Doran, or perhaps Kyrie is kind of in between, along with Elise. They're sort of our in-between artists in that sense.
So Anthony, when you get a new artist that comes in and maybe they don't really have any experience with the creative process even yet, how do you begin to work with them to get them to start creating something?
Yeah, I mean, we usually start pretty simple with just like pencil and paper and see how that goes. If they're able to hold a pencil. If not, we usually try to find ways around that so that they can hold something. Usually within, I would say, a bit of time, we'll start to switch them onto new things, bring in different colors, bring in paint too, and see how they respond to that. So really the first day is just kind of seeing how they respond to different mediums or different materials, and then also what kind of thing they like to respond to. Are they working, like I said, out of their imagination? So when you just give them a pencil and paper, we'll usually just ask them, do you want something to reference from, or do you just want to work out of your imagination? If they're not able to speak, then we kind of just will offer them many things and just see how they respond to them. I think even if somebody says like, I want a reference book, sometimes that doesn't always mean that they won't prefer to work out of their imagination. So it's just a process of working really one-on-one with them to just see how they kind of respond to different sort of stimuli, I suppose, whether that be materially based or, visual.
And then once they're in process, you have folks that have been there for quite a while. What kind of interjection do you have, or what kind of guidance do you provide throughout their process?
It really depends on the individual. Like, as I said, everything's really individually based here. So oftentimes it'll just be like, that's amazing what you're doing. Would you like to try it larger? Sometimes the response will be not right now. So we'll keep kind of trying that over time. We keep all the materials out for people to be able to take themselves. And one of the things we really like to do is develop some independence. So sometimes those things happen on their own, where they'll just try a new material because it's out and they can access it. And if somebody wants to learn something, really specific, say somebody wants to learn 1-point perspective, and they indicate that to us by drawing in a certain way and saying that they want to, draw the building different or something, or differently, we can kind of work with them to show them how to do that. There's never any work that's actually done on their own work. We never touch their work. It's always theirs. So anything that we do would be on a separate sheet of paper, or like I said, sometimes in workshops, we'll do little workshops too. If there's like a subject that keeps coming up that a lot of people are asking about, then we'll, do a kind of small workshop in the studio that anyone can decide to participate in or not, if they do or don't. That's other ways to kind of encourage that.
What's your philosophy in terms of working with these folks, and then sort of the balance between sort of outsider art versus teaching them some techniques as they go?
Yeah, I don't, if they want to learn technique, they can learn it. I think, and my philosophy comes from my own experiences in art school and also working as a teacher, that I felt that we were actually really undermining a lot of creativity by, really teaching in kind of one direction rather than sort of allowing natural tendencies to kind of flourish. And I got a little burnt out from working in academia, which is what I did prior to coming here, and actually to Soul Studio prior to this. and found that this environment was a lot more conducive to experimentation and for kind of material exploration. And the work ended up being a lot more, I thought, vibrant and interesting happening here than what was happening really in art school. So my philosophy is not to sort of push in any of these areas, but and really operate from a position of sort of yes and as much positivity as possible. So sort of any direction anyone goes with their work is positive, whether it results in some sort of mistake or error. Oftentimes that can be worked into just some really beautiful kind of choices or aesthetics, right? I can show you this piece really quick here by, this is actually one of the finished pieces that Gerard, who you saw up there with the two Elmos, has done. So he's got a lot of work that's sort of very writing based, and this is just over time kind of layering the writing over each other until he gets this kind of incredible sort of almost mosaic of text, which I think is really wonderful. It's also the backdrop that I had before.
So we talked a little about beginning and middle. How do you help folks understand when a piece is finished? If
That's
it is
an
ever
interesting
finished.
question. Some people are very adamant when something is finished, and like Stanley will tell us it's done, and you know, then it's done. Sometimes we may say, I think that piece is really good, but would you be interested in trying one more layer in a different color, say using this, which we think would really just finish it. You know, I do like to kind of think that this studio, although it's a large kind of open studio space, is maybe not so different from the relationship that an artist and his or her studio assistants may have, you know, as well, where our staff are kind of like, you know, studio assistants here. They're here to, you know, not only provide support in terms of like materials and getting things prepared and that kind of stuff, but also advice and thoughts, which happens a lot in the studio. Professional artists don't often talk about the fact that they are in conversation with their studio assistants quite a lot. But I think that's sort of a bit like the conversation that may happen here, is there's a bit of that sort of back and forth. Some people in the studio do work in such a way where sometimes we have to, we pull stuff instead of letting it continue on, because it may get to a point where it looks really great and we feel it's done, and the artist wants to keep working on it. And if they protest and say, absolutely not, like, of course, we put it back. But if it's somebody who tends to be very process oriented, and just the action of sort of painting over and over or doing kind of repeated gestures is what kind of drives them, then in that instance, we will often, you know, sort of pull something or be like, okay, it's done. And part of that, you know, we look at this over a very long time frame. We're not looking at this on a really a daily basis in terms of growth, or even a weekly or monthly. It's really like a 6 month to a year that we're sort of looking at, like, okay, where did somebody start at and where are they now? So if there's, you know, sort of gradual changes, or sometimes things that that we do or the artist does that result maybe in errors, they're part of the experimentation process. And you can see then over 6 months or a year actually what that has occurred. So we may, you know, direct people to try things that are maybe not so comfortable to them, just to have them try it out and see how it goes. And eventually those, you know, redirections will come back to the work they did before and result in a much more kind of complex piece.
Taranay has a question. She has her hand raised.
Okay, here, maybe I'll go back to my computer so I can actually see the chat. Give me one second.
Okay. Yeah, there were some good contributions to the check from Amy and her people.
Oh, awesome. All right, I'm going to turn this phone off.
Go for it, Taranay.
Yeah, thank you. So Michael asked a few questions that I had, but they did overlap with my kind of COVID focus. Can you, oh, sorry. Can you hear me now? Yeah, I thought you were waiting. So thank you. That was really great to see all that. And Michael asked some good questions, but just starting because I was a little out of focus. which location are you actually at?
We're in Southgate, Michigan
You're
right
in
now.
Southgate. Okay. And then, so some of the questions that came up, you talked a little bit about materials and how you give access to certain materials and where they come from. I also wonder, you know, you showed that because you have access to the thrift store next door, which is really great. But I wonder about also like, this kind of balances with the questions that I had, and you kind of got up, you know, in response to Michael's questions about, you know, how you approach facilitation support and it being self-taught, but also providing resources. And I think I wonder about with mediums, you know, like whether lens-based practices, like how you might, you know, like, and I know that you, sounds like, you know, you've done a lot in the time since you started, but whether that's something on the radar. And like, that's often something, right? The technical aspect of that, you need a workshop. So it was interesting you said that you do give workshops. And that kind of connects, besides that question, to, you know, as an art curator, you know, you were kind of outlining a lot of the things that you were doing in the beginning before you showed us the work. And, you know, and like seeing the work, I was thinking both of this in terms of like, you know, everyone has their individual practice, right? So you're talking about this is kind of like a fallacy in the way that like art has become rarefied, culture has become rarefied as the individual genius artist, right? And I think all of us know that that's like, yeah, bullshit. But this idea of like, we always have support in different ways, but also we're making in community. So I think, you know, going into All Means All last time, there was a lot of great feedback for artists, but I wonder, you know, so you mentioned that you're working with 4 curators for the Eastern market, you know, and just kind of seeing in some art, right? There's a lot of actual use of text. There's a lot of repetition, right? So these are, you know, things that a curator might draw out or, you know, in a studio visit. So I wonder about, you know, not just supporting the individual artists, but, you know, how you support the overlaps between practices, you know, both like maybe in a show, but also through workshops or through, you know, just kind of dialogue in the community.
So I think that was maybe 3 or 4 questions. The first one, and I'll just answer the first one. You asked about lens-based practices. I think, was it the word lens or did I misunderstand you?
Yeah, like
okay.
Photo, video, all that.
Yeah. I think I have a lot of questions about the role of that. I mean, for me, the most important thing here is that the tool not, you know, sort of supersede the individual. And I think the sort of key to this work and to kind of the sort of background or the history of this work and why places like Creative Growth were really latching on to self-taught or sort of outsider art and that kind of thing. Why they found that enticing was because they, you know, these were people who were working in institutions or sort of quotes asylums or whatever prior to those being shut down before they opened up programs like Creative Growth, working in the same way, in a way that people work in these studios today. And they thought really amazing things were happening there, but it was a much more self-driven practices that were happening. So they saw with the sort of embrace of self-taught and outsider art that basically a sort of, you know, what you could maybe define as kind of disability aesthetics, or allowing artists to not hide their disabilities, but rather work in a way and be directed in a way to work with their disabilities and see them as a strength rather than something that should be hidden under either other mediums or other sort of forms or directed forms of art making, putting things within like you know, a European sort of model of a European canon, you could say. So when it comes to things like lens-based practices, I think film is a really, you know, thing that I would love to sort of bring in at some point, meaning movie and video and that kind of thing. Camera gets a little bit more complicated, where I think that, and also digital media, in my experience, particularly at Soul Studio, and actually even seeing some things in MFA shows and stuff like that, I get wary when the technology is used to mask the disability and make things cleaner and sort of quotes correct the crooked line. So, which happens quite a lot in some other sort of art environments that I've seen before. and I have some issues around that being used. So if there's a way to incorporate it in where it becomes part of a whole process and it's used in a way where it doesn't sort of stand ahead of the work itself, but is actually incorporated into a number of other things, then I think it could be a great and totally viable thing to incorporate in the studio. We had a painter in the studio that I ran prior to this at Soul Studio, who named Fabian, who did these incredible kind of landscape paintings and was working a lot from photographs and books. And we were sort of working towards teaching him how to use the camera so he could actually take his own photographs and then start working from his own photographs. And I think that would be a fantastic way to kind of like build that kind of media in. I think it's definitely possible. One of the other things that we're sort of looking at, I talked a little bit about design, is ways to sort of bring that in as well. And so I think there are ways to bring in sort of digital media or lens-based media. But I just also am a little cautious about how that's done. I hope that super long-winded answer to that was clear.
I just want to piggyback on maybe one of our other questions about exhibits, and you've had quite a bit of success of getting exhibits in other locations. Can you kind of talk through that process of the curating and the networking that it takes, and how do you get that set up? How do you make the choices of what artists, the whole process? Because I think everybody could really benefit from that.
Yeah. And can I just respond to with the curating question that I asked, it was also a little bit about peer learning. So I don't know if that came out because of my COVID, but I understand that history a little bit of the lens-based practices. And I think just also to say, I'm forgetting the artist's name right now, but from the last All Means All, there was, an artist who was working in lens-based practices, talking a little bit about their process. So yeah, that was helpful to hear. But with the curating, yeah, I'm wondering about that balance of focusing on the individual. And so, yeah, a little bit with what Michael is saying. And then also the idea of documentation. So we saw a lot of amazing works and I'm like, oh, where could I point people to them? So that beyond the shows themselves yeah.
Yeah, so I think the first part in the curation aspect of it. So you'd also, Doran asked about some of the text-based work, and I sort of alluded with Gerard to the show that he had with Doran and also Robert. And it was sort of three artists that we saw who had a kind of similarity, who were all sort of working in the same studio. And so we put a show in this studio space, or this gallery space, with all three of them together. They all came to the opening. We talked about their work together. So one of the things that we're starting to build in, and the really important function of having a gallery connected to the studio, is that it becomes a kind of pedagogical space, not only for people to see their work next to other peers, but also just to see their work in frames, and put on kind of a white wall and treated with, in a professional manner. And I think that's really key for them to understand, what they do in the studio, as moving from there into a kind of different space where you can kind of stand back and look at it. Gerard loves to kind of talk to people about his work and kind of give tours. And so he's extremely active when people come around to see the shows. I think in terms of the other exhibitions, it's really dependent on the site and kind of I suppose the context of that site as well, what we do there and who curates the show. So some of the recent shows that we've done, so we had a show at the Scarab Club, which was our first public exhibition. And I should say, and this will answer, I think, Doran's other question. Prior to that, we had 2 online exhibitions. So we launched a website in May, for our studio. And that website has, and it's Progressive Art Studio, collective.org. At some point when I'm not talking, I'll type it in the chat, or somebody else can search it and put it in there if you want. And it has online exhibitions that we did, and we've kind of haven't really done as many online exhibitions, but every exhibition that we do in person also has an online component. So you can see all the work that's in the show there, the press release and all that as well. Every artist, almost every artist, I'm doing most of this myself at the moment. So Almost every artist has a bio page where there's a like short bio for them, which is kind of increasing as they have more shows. We're sort of adding them to the bio to sort of develop a CV for them and that kind of thing as well. And then you can see all of their work on their page as well. So there's a series of artist pages. The other exhibitions that we've done, so the Scarab Club show to the show that we did at the Swords into Plowshares Gallery, and then also we actually have a show up right now at Westland City Hall, at the gallery at Westland City Hall. All of those shows have been group shows as a way to basically get as many of our artists' work out into the public as possible, and just kind of share what we're doing. It's the first year of this, so we're just trying to get as much out into the public as we can. The focus on this gallery has been a little bit more on doing shows that are a little bit more on a fewer artists at a time to kind of see the relationships between them. That's not our website, Susan, but thank you. I think PASC is also an acronym for like long COVID, by the way, which is like sort of a sad coincidence of our moment. So I'm not really sure where that website will take you, but anyway, let's see what else. What was I talking about? So yeah, this Southgate space, to be honest, doesn't have a huge bunch of traffic because of where we're located. So we've been using this as a space to focus a little bit more on a couple of artists work together to see the relationships between them. And then the shows that we have coming up at this kind of pop-up gallery, and the reason to invite some outside kind of curators to do that is really just to bring in other perspectives and have them, and also increase our audience, honestly. So they have people who follow them and who are connected to them. So that can then just sort of increase the audience for our artists, as well as have them have a, you know, a focus on what we're doing. And the 4 people who, or actually 5 people who are curating those shows. The first one is a Detroit artist named James Benjamin Franklin. And he kind of heard about our program pretty early on and actually started buying work pretty quickly. And so he was really super interested in what we're doing. So, and it's just been there all along. So he seemed like a good match. And he's a somewhat well-known artist, I think, in the Detroit and kind of global art scene too. And then the next show is curated by Anita Bates and Tom Przuski, both from Wayne State in the art education program, which is another area that we're sort of working between, kind of trying to bring this kind of progressive art model back into art education a little bit, and sort of art therapy and that kind of thing as well. So they'll be doing the next show. Then Bridget Finn, and I should say Tom and Anita have kind of been involved with our program since it's been founded. And then Bridget Finn, who's one of the directors and partners of Reyes Finn Gallery, who's also been with us kind of since the beginning, big supporter of what we do, and is also a mother of a child with disabilities. Is the next curator. And then the final curator is an artist named Tyrell Winston, who shows with Library Street Collective, who's been also really super interested in what we do and our program, and wanting to do anything he can with us to help support or you know, work with our program. He also has like an insane Instagram following. So in terms of audience for him, that's also really, really helpful to get the PASC artists' work out into the public and get them sort of more exposure and sales and things like that as well. So hopefully that answers that. Laura, you had your hand up for a very long time.
Well, I'm thinking about back in the early 200s.
200s. That's a long time ago.
Yeah, we were existing at the Arc Detroit, and we did have classes, and STEP participants came to us. And a couple of things that I recall were very interesting is we did have artists with disabilities teaching. And one of them was involved with, got people involved with life drawing. And we had an actual model that, so there were artists with us that did do their work from photographs, and we got them to think about the real person instead of the person in the photograph. And then there were other times that we did things with still life. So it's just, you know, introducing people on about how other artists work, you know. So that those things really emanated. I mean, there was interesting art that emanated from those experiences.
It'd be great to bring life drawing into here. We're also a small staff doing a lot. So we have a lot of ideas, but we, you know, are trying to also manage 3 different studios in 3 totally different places with, like, I think 7 or 8 staff now. So it's a little bit of that, but and a lot of it has been kind of closed because of COVID, but I think now
Right.
some of those things hopefully do more of it. Okay, were there some other questions in the chat that I didn't respond to?
There were a lot of kudos in the chat from Amy's people. Amy, why don't you share?
I mean, I have one question. It's more a material question. So Anthony, we are going to, are you hearing the echo again?
Just a little bit, it's not too bad.
It's okay.
Okay, sorry. So we are launching an expansion of our program, and I'm really, fingers crossed, hoping to do a mentorship program that sounds a little bit like what you have with visiting artists that come in and just kind of work alongside. And our current space is very eclectic, very bright, kind of overwhelming. And our new space is going to be more like a boutique type of clean, sleek, you know, pop-up shop type of feel to it. So that in mind, we're looking at framing things. And I was really drawn to the frames that you guys have for your work. Did you buy those wholesale? Do you have a source for those? If so, could you just email me that?
Yeah, would you mind actually emailing me just to remind me? I might forget after this, and I can send you our contact. We're actually working with a framer right now, which is just lucky, but we were initially you know, buying frames and producing them ourselves.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right.
Anthony, the only other question I had was maybe you can talk through how you staff the studio. What kind of supports do you have? What do you feel you really need? What are the jobs that are involved and so on?
We need money. No, I'm the same way everybody else. So we staff, the staffing is complicated in everywhere right now, I think, with COVID or post-COVID or whatever. We have really amazing staff who work with us, but I will say that our staff has, we've gone through some staff since we've started, and it's just the nature of the time now. I think there's been people who've been really great, who've been really interested in the studio, and just because of whatever else is going on in their life, just couldn't stay with us. So we tend to look for people who have backgrounds, not necessarily working with people with disabilities. That's not a requirement. It's great if they do, but working with a wide variety of people. And I think that's really important. So one of the best staff I had actually at Soul Studio prior, worked at Pewabic, and never worked specifically with somebody, at least that they knew, who had diagnosed disabilities, but worked with such a wide range of people, from, you know, children to like, you know, middle-aged to older adults, that it gave them a really good sense of how to work with people with very different kinds of abilities. So we're really looking for that. People have to have an extremely positive mindset and kind of a can-do attitude, but I think you know what I mean. You know, it's just like this space the key thing here, and in my experience, we had a volunteer program at Soul Studio that was great and awesome in a lot of ways, and very complicated and messy in a lot of other ways. And one of the things that we sort of had to constantly undo was we had like a sewing area and a fibers area that I hope to bring in a similar thing to this program at some point down the line. And really incredible sort of sewers who worked with us, but they would constantly rip out the artist's sewing that they did and go back through and do straight lines. So, you know, I think that kind of tendency is one that you really don't want. You want to make sure to not hire somebody who's going to do that, whether that's drawing wise or otherwise. So you have to have an incredible amount of patience, I think, in this environment. And also just be somebody who doesn't get upset if things aren't going exactly as they'd sort of hoped that the artist would take things, right? So sometimes I find people who are heavily involved in education can sometimes be a little bit too I don't know, they want an outcome or results happening really fast because that's what they've been told to or taught to do. And, you know, rather than see that over a month, over 2 months, over, 6 months or a year. So it takes a certain quality there. But, you know, I think most of the people that we've hired since being here have really kind of exhibited that, or maybe just get a sense of it from the studio and from the environment of the studio itself.
It
Looks
reminds
like
me.
Doran has a good question and comment in the chat for you.
Oh yeah, so I wrote the bios because I've just been doing everything myself. But it would be great if some of the artists can write a little bit. Not all the artists are verbal. So there's really a wide range, but we're starting to build that in. But I think that's a really good point. I mean, back to sort of staff and like one of the things that would be awesome would be to have somebody who might want to come in and visit the studios and could do something like that, like interview some of the artists, incorporate some of those things in. And, you know, because I think there's a lot of other areas where like we have a lot of the bare bones of this, like are pretty clear. They're nicely put together, but the nuances are not there yet because there's just not time for it, whether that be like a figure drawing class that would be incredible, or, you know, other, you know, ways of doing workshops and stuff like that, or things within the website itself to just get more, you know, individual voices, like what Terne said in the chat.
Yeah, and I mean, I've worked for museums and nonprofit art spaces, and sometimes it's like the institution has an anonymous voice. So the ones I read are good. So you should credit yourself because then it knows who's interpreting it, right? Like if you had if you had Bridget come in, it would be credited to Bridget. So yeah,
Good point.
it's a way without staffing that you can represent, you know, and it's like who's representing, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe put in there like bio written by, you know, cool. Yeah, I like that. All right. Anything
And I
else?
also asked the best way to follow all this great stuff that you have going on. Is it the newsletter on the website, or is it the Facebook page, or what's the best way to?
Newsletter would be great. Yeah, if you want to sign up for that, or you can just send me an email and I'll make sure to add you either way. And my email, I can put it in the chat. I guess we're all in the same thread though, no?
Yeah.
How do your folks get to the program? Is there transportation or they get there on their own?
Depends. There is transportation. So some people get picked up by STEP. And so this studio is is different from the other ones. The other ones at the resource centers, there's transportation that will go directly to the resource center from their home. People who come here to Southgate get usually taken to the resource center or dropped off at the resource center. And then a van goes from the resource center here. So it's different depending on the location. There are some people who take the smart bus. Other people, we've got one person who drives and then another person, a couple people who get dropped off. So various methods, but yeah, there is transportation. It's right now only within Wayne County that we're working with people, although we're starting to kind of like edge into Macomb a little bit. And there is an artist who I think is going to probably come from Macomb, actually all the way down here to be in this program. But we'll see what the future of that is.
Is there, or have you run into transportation issues when you have an exhibit? Is outside
Yeah.
your normal purview, right?
Yeah, sure. You mean for the artist to get to the show? Yeah, it's complicated. So if an artist is living in a group home, oftentimes it's very difficult to get them there unless we can get a staff to run a step van and pick a bunch of people up and take them. So I think for our next show coming up is really hard. When we had a 40-person show at Westland, we got maybe I don't know, maybe a sixth, which was actually pretty good for us. But I think for our show that's opening up in Eastern Market, we're going to get probably not everybody, but really close to all of the 13 artists who are in that show to the opening. So it's a much smaller space.